welcome back, fellow adventurers, to part 2 of our captivating exploration into medieval health, heritage, and osteoarchaeology with none other than the famous Dr. Marie C. Weale. She's a human osteologist and research associate at the Manx National Heritage. So if you've joined us from episode 1, you'll remember our fascinating dive into how Dr. Weale's research on the Isle of Man is reshaping what we know about maternal health and vitamin D deficiency between specifically AD 500 to 1500. And we're talking about the culture, the enduring mystery of the bones buried in stories. So today, this is episode 2, and we're going to pick up where we left off, starting on how vitamin D deficiency is actually identified in skeletal remains or even the teeth, and how these ancient bones whisper into our past lives. We'll learn how dental and bone histology unlock secrets about diet, disease, maternal care, and what distinct osteological markers show up when analyzing female remains from this period. So buckle your seatbelt, fasten your field hat, and as we continue into an academic excavation through time with Dr. Marie Weale, and we'll dig even deeper into the legacies left in bones. So we're always excited to have her. Like we said, she's the first osteologist we've had. We've always dealt with more of like the cultural aspect of it as opposed to the literal anthropology of the bone. So this is quite exciting, and it's opened up. If you've watched last episode, you'll see how she has not unique, but a very good teaching style to where it makes you come to the next literal conclusion, or it opens up extra questions that leave you wanting more answers, thinking about different research aspects. It's very good. So this is going to be a cram-filled episode as well. So we're just going to hop on into the next question. She has been such a sport too. So even though you guys are watching this in 2 different weeks, she and I are on like a marathon because we are recording this all in one weekend. So one day. So question next. How do dental and bone histology contribute to our understanding of, like we said, diet, disease, and maternal care of the past?
So this is why I selected on like a multi-methodology or multi-technique kind of method. So the bones give you the skeletal side of deficiency, but like I said before, so it doesn't always manifest to that level. You can't always see it. So then you can do stuff like micro CT scanning, which is what we've done on the teeth. So teeth they form from the dental enamel junction. So you've got your enamel on the outside, your dentine on the inside, and there's a little kind of join between the two. So they start to form from there, and then they form outwards. So your enamel goes up and your dentine goes down. But that happens in like a 3D kind of way. So you think about the cusp, the surface of a tooth. So all of that starts to form, and then it goes outwards. So teeth are 3D structures. So when you take a micro CT scan, what you can see is the deficiency, but you can see it in a 3D setting. So you can see these bands that go all the way around the tooth.
Wow.
And then when you get to but micro CT isn't a resolution yet where you can see the smaller features within the tooth. So like the neonatal line, which I've talked about before, is the line.
Yeah. So how are you seeing it? How did you see the neonatal line?
So then you go to the dental histology. So this is where you take the tooth, you cut the tooth in half, and then you embed it in a resin, and you take a slice almost out of that, put it onto glue it down onto a microscope slide, and then polish it down to a really, really kind of like thin layer so you can see through it with a microscope, and you can see the neonatal line in the enamel from there.
I'd like to say something to the viewers. So this is what she was talking about in the last episode, where we're talking about like destructive testing, where you literally have to like take the tooth per se, and like you're going to cut it in half. So it's not going to be, or whatever, you're going to cut off a bisection of it. And she was talking about how in certain considerations have to come into play to where you think, is it more valuable to have this information and destroy like a portion of something? Like she was talking about the 2 neonatal specimens that she had, the 2 newborn babies is what neonatal means, newly born neonatal. It was more valuable to keep them whole than it was to do any type of destructive testing on it. And so there, it's not that the specimens that she has doesn't have more information. It's just that at our level of technology right now, it requires, like she said, the CT is not advanced enough to where you can see the neonatal line, so you'd have to do destructive testing on it. So maybe in the future she could revisit some of the skeletons or the specimens that she has and do future testing on it to where she could get more exact answers without having to do destructive specimens. So just in case you're not in the field and you don't know what we're talking about with that, just this is a perfect example of what she was talking about. You literally would have to cut the tooth. You can't just put the tooth back together. You have to cut it. You're going to bisection it. You're going to glue it to a slide, look at it under a microscope. All right, as you were saying. So
Yeah, so it's and then so you can see, hopefully, so you can see your enamel, you can see your dentine, you see it all under a microscope, and you can take pictures with microscopes and all that type of thing, and then you can you know, kind of crunch your measurements and do all of that.
yeah.
So it's all really interesting stuff. And that's what shows you the higher resolution. So each stage of this kind of gives you the next step, and it gives you more data and more data. But in another way, it gives you the more individual experience of deficiency. And that's what I found in my PhD research, because I did an industrial population. You know, we had names for some of these individuals.
Wow.
And it was really personal to be able to like look at this individual, know their name, in some cases know their birthday, um,
Wow.
and then look at them and be like, okay, so this individual had, you know, they had deficiency transferred from their mother, and then they suffered their second episode at the age of 2, and then they suffered their third episode at the age of
Wow.
5, and then they died at the age of 7 with active deficiency. And you build that picture of that relationship with the deficiency throughout their life, as opposed to, you know, when you see it just skeletally, I can tell you
Yeah.
if it's there or if it's not there, but you don't get that same personal feel, like, you know, that same
Yeah.
personal understanding of it as you do through looking at it at these higher resolution methods.
Yeah.
And it is really quite yeah, it's really interesting to be able to see at that kind of level of granularity as well.
That's really something I was thinking about as an example to our younger students that are watching this, because even through elementary do they watch these episodes. Um, I'd like to parallel for our younger students that what she's talking about with the tooth. Imagine an apple, okay? And imagine you have an apple, which actually kind of looks like a tooth in a vague way. You have the peel like enamel, the dentin being like the part of the apple that you eat. I mean, you eat the peel too. But, and you know where the core is? Imagine if the core, that would be like kind of where the pulp is associated. So imagine when your mom or your grandma's making a pie and they core it, then they slice those apples on the mandolin for maybe apple pie or something like that. That type of bisection where it's like the apple that has the, you can still see part of the skin, you can, and you can still see like the white part of the apple. That is what they would glue on a microscope to look at it. So imagine an apple. If you are unfamiliar with teeth, imagine it like a bisection of an apple with kind of like the pulp being removed, the core. I mean, I suppose you could even put the core in and see the pulp, like the blood flow to the tooth too. So do you do it? Does it have the bisections that
No,
you look at?
not by the
That's
time
all
I
dried
kind of
up
do it.
by then, right?
Yeah, no, all the soft tissue's gone by the time I get to it, so
So
it's okay.
imagine it dried up. Imagine it a cored apple, and then you've
Yeah,
got what she's looking at, but with a tooth.
yeah, it's the
Um,
same type of idea.
yeah. Let's
Absolutely.
just make some apple pie just to celebrate this. You know? It's just
Um,
like a tooth, guys. No, actually, we're doing a big apple festival at school on tomorrow, and we're doing both for like Apple Fest for September and then like Rosh Hashanah too, which is like a Shana Tova apples with in honey type of extravaganza. Let me see here. So okay, let me ask you another question. What are some of the specific osteological markers or pathologies you encounter when analyzing female remains from this period?
so I haven't really found any, to
Oh,
be honest.
interesting.
So I find different kind of things that are quite prominent on different kind of populations, but there's no real specific things I've found on the females.
Yeah.
As of yet, anyway.
Yeah.
Each population kind of has its own. So we have so Ballador, which is I talked about in the last episode.
Yes.
They've with the Viking boat burial and everything. So that early crystal population, I think 3 or 4 of them have broken their wrists or arms in one way or another, which is quite an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And then you get to Russian Abbey, which is the much bigger site, and that's 250-ish individuals, of which there's 25 of which are articulated, and kind of from there we've got two cases of sharp force trauma, we've got evidence of fractured clavicles, evidence of a type of cancer,
Wow.
we can see different types of diseases that maybe
Yeah.
or that we didn't even know were kind of present before, and also evidence of that interpersonal
This would
trauma.
make cancer in bones because, well, like you said, all the soft tissue's gone. So you're
Yeah,
seeing evidence of bone cancer. Interesting.
yeah. So benign, osteoid osteoma. So it's a benign form of cancer. But yeah, so and it's on a lower leg, it's on tibia, so
Oh,
it's on a lower leg bone. And it's the only case we've kind of found so far. But it's a really interesting case.
that's wonderful. It really, I talking about CT scans. So Dr. Zaki Hawass comes to America so often. He's like in Egypt. He's like the world's most famous archaeologist, but he's like an Egyptologist primarily. And he's been doing CT scans on the mummies that he's recovered from ancient Egypt. And much to the chagrin of some people who believed that Queen Hatshepsut was killed because the person she was being a co-regent for was coming of age, he found out that she died of cancer as well. So cancer's been around since ancient Egypt, even so. So it's interesting. Something I want to point out to people, and I believe that you will agree with me, is that you can tell whether a bone was broken after death, post-mortem, or during a lifetime because you'll see healing. So the bone's not going to heal after death. So when Dr. Weale is looking at a bone and she's talking about various breaks, she can tell if it happened during a lifetime or if it happened due to just like, a bone breaking because of it being old and deteriorating, because you should be able to see various stages of healing, if not a complete healing, because they lived long enough for the bone to heal. Correct in that?
Largely, yeah. So there are some cases. So if it happens kind of around the time of death,
Yeah.
it can be a little bit harder to identify, because so whilst kind of in soft tissue you get that, is there was there blood flow to that area, wasn't the blood flow, and it's quite easy to tell. With bone it's a little bit more complicated because that elastic component of bone takes longer to break down in the burial
Mm,
environment, so it can be a little bit less kind of cut and dry.
yeah.
But if somebody, like there's a clavicle from Russian Abbey that honestly is like nothing I've ever seen anyway, and it's fractured, but it was misaligned. They were never able to align it,
Ooh,
and as a result, it just became this massive infection.
wow.
So it's an infection in bone when bacteria gets in. It's called osteomyelitis, and you can see the cloaca or the holes in it where the pus would have been draining from the bone,
Mm.
and it looks awful, absolutely.
It's probably
Um,
visible, right? Just from just
yeah,
looking at the
oh,
person, you see
definitely,
like a
definitely.
wow,
Um, but it's also evidence that that person lived with that for such a long time.
wow.
And it's quite kind of shocking when you see it. You kind of think, how on earth did somebody walk with this
Yeah.
or
Well, don't they
live
say
with
the
this
clavicle is
underneath?
one of the most painful breaks?
Yeah,
The clavicle,
yeah,
maybe the coccyx,
absolutely.
since the other one.
Yeah, like
Wow.
it's honestly quite crazy to look at. But it is, yeah. So you can see
You
evidence
know,
of it.
and then you would imagine, much to your point of your research, is that somebody who probably has a broken clavicle, it's painful to move around, they may not go out in the sun as
Yeah,
much because they're just going to stay, not necessarily bedridden, but they're going to try to have as least amount of pain, and that's going to compound the problem. because they're the bones. Wow, really good research. Um, wow, that do you have an image of that by chance?
Yeah, so it's on the it's in the monograph publication for the Russian Abbey monograph.
Oh,
Not to plug it as an advertisement.
no, but if anybody wants to follow along with what she's talking about, you want to see that image because she says this particular clavicle is unlike anything she's ever seen. We can tell that the person not only had a broken clavicle, they lived a long time with a broken clavicle. So if you want to see that, trace back to where what she's just referenced, and you can see that image for yourself. Um, very good stuff. Um, oh, what we're getting into in the next one, I'm very very interested in. The on your next question, we were talking a little bit about this off camera. Um, so what are the burial or grave differences between male and female individual during the medieval Manx period? But in general, for people who don't know about the burial period at all, maybe even touch on the Christian version and the Norse pagan, the Viking, and how some of them there was like a period with both of them. Tell us everything.
Yeah, so we have loads of different types of burials here, to be honest. So we have these lintel graves, which are, they dig the grave in the ground. And of course, with these as well, you have to remember the dead don't bury themselves.
Right.
So that's the first thing to kind of think about. So all of the bits that you might find in the grave, they were placed in by other people. They weren't, placed in by the individual who's within that grave. So you have the rectangle in the ground, and what they do is they line it with slate, and then they'll put the individual in the ground, and then they'll put a slate covering on the top as well, and then they'll cover it all up. So those are the lintel graves, and
Is it
generally you
like
see
a
those.
literal sealed box on the bottom, or is it got just lined and like roots could
It's
grow
lined,
in?
yeah, no. So there's nothing on the bottom. At least at the ones I've seen, there's nothing
Okay,
on the
so the
bottom.
dirt is just in it.
Yeah, and when you kind of excavate them, and when you look at old pictures, you can kind of see lines on the inside, which has been interpreted as like evidence of it filling up with water and then going back down
Oh,
again.
wow.
But some of them have really, really good preservation. So there's a sample from a site called Speak Keel, which is kind of again early Christian, and there was a plait or like a plate of hair
Oh,
found in one, and I think it dates to about the 5th, 6th century. So you can
wow.
have like, the most, like amazing preservation in some of them.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. So we have those, and those are the most common kind of burial method for the early Christian cemetery, and they're associated with those keels that we talked about in the first episode, which are like a Christian place of worship. And there's about 180 of those across the island. And then you get to the Viking period, and we have the clear Viking burials. So, as small as our island is, we have two Viking boat burials,
Wow.
which is crazy. And we have a key kind of a couple of other key kind of Viking burials as well. But what we do also have, and this is because we're a really small place with a really kind of preservation, or like rich preservation of the history. You see these cemeteries where they're kind of transition cemeteries. So Peel Castle is a prime example where you can see Christian graves, so those lintel graves I was talking about, but you see Viking individuals in them.
Wow.
Um, and one of the most famous case is the pagan lady. So all you'd have to do is kind of just Google her. She's
Pagan
there.
lady, guys.
And she's a female individual. The isotope analysis that was done on her location-wise shows that she's from some region of Scandinavia. So she's buried in a Christian grave, but with Norse grave goods, and a range of them. One of them is a bead necklace that's
Hmm.
made of amber jet. All kinds of amazing things that's on show at the museum. And I'm actually involved on a research project that somebody's currently doing on that set of remains as well. And that's really interesting. She's looking at it from more of an archaeological view, because when you look at Vikings, they're kind of stereotypically men, and
Yeah.
you look at that narrative around it. And then you look at some of the most famous Viking burials, and actually reassessment has shown that they were women.
Wow.
Um,
So is
so
she 100% like 100% Viking type of thing, or was she like the daughter of a Viking and a Isle of
No, she
Man
wasn't.
person?
She wasn't born on the island. She
Oh wow.
travelled. Our isotope shows she was born somewhere in Scandinavia. Um, and ultimately ended up living and dying here. And there's multiple kind of interpretations around
Yeah. What's the
everything.
concept of why she had a Christian burial? What's the leading
So
idea?
they think that she she converted, but again
Oh, okay.
it depends what you read. So that there's about 24 of these graves, I think, from Peel Castle, that are kind of begged or bagged, if you like, as these transition burials, where
Mm.
you see the combining of Norse grave goods and Christian kind of burial practices. And Peel Castle again, so that's a castle towards the west of the island, had a church on it. It was a very, very, very prominent site in our history, so clearly very important.
Yeah.
And then you get to a little bit later, and some of the really, really old cemeteries, you can kind of see gravestones with evidence
Oh,
of
yes.
um, kind of intermarriage between settlers and local people and things like that. So
Like crosses
um,
and runic writing or stuff like that, right?
yeah, so we also have Manx stone crosses again are a huge thing, and they kind of show the Christianization
Mm.
um, of Vikings, if you like, throughout the period. So it's really interesting, and it's all really, really well preserved.
What was the original before the Christianization of the Isle of Man? What was and before the Viking influence as well? What was the original religious concept,
No
or was it?
idea.
Yeah,
No
I
idea.
wonder. That's something. We need another person on your team to also research that. I'm telling you, I'm gonna have your whole team laid out by the time these
Yeah, I
interviews are
couldn't.
done.
I honestly, so I'm not really. I wouldn't really consider myself an archaeologist, if I'm honest. It's not. I've never studied it. I have
A
an
human
interest in it.
osteologist is what you would call yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I surround myself with people who know much more than I do
Yeah.
about the different things, and
And it
that's
gives
really
a meaning
where.
and interpretation to your finds.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because like I look at it from one perspective, but somebody with an understanding of that period, much more than I would ever have, looks at it in a completely different way. And that's really where the collaboration comes in
Yeah.
to research. Because doing research on your own is fine, but I just think research becomes so much better when you work with people.
A
Because
crack team of
it
experts come together.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because it just makes it so much richer. And these people, they don't necessarily have to be, academics. They can be people that have lived in that area their entire life and understand it so much
Like
more than
local
you ever would.
historians.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be the academic route that you take through that, because academia can tell you so much, but the people that live in that environment understand it, they can also tell you so much more. And that's really where like the richness of it can come in.
I love that. And that it also goes to say not to be an academic snob where you only listen to people whose name has doctor in front of it. Although we're both doctors, but still, like you, to your point, usually it's the historians, the local historians at the local museums who really get it because they've been understanding it and knowing it from birth on. It's just like second nature to this is over here at this well is where this is at. They're living in the in the historic markers, which I know you're from the island too. It's
Yeah.
very good, very good. Here is something interesting, which we always kind of touch on this. How do you ensure ethical handling of human remains when working on both heritage institutions and like local communities? Because we have seen the smash and grabs of a few archaeologists who have definitely just they take the things. I mean, even King Tutankhamun's it wasn't Howard Carter's handling of Tutankhamun's skeleton leaves a lot to be desired. So how do you handle, knowing what we know now, the humane and ethical handling of these specimens that you're working on?
So I like try to work as kind of what I would call as ethically as possible. And that also, just that sentence makes me sound like a hypocrite, because ultimately my work, some way or another, involves some type of destructive analysis usually.
Yeah, but you
Um,
definitely covered why you didn't do the neonatal
um,
specimens. So
yeah,
it's yeah, so
absolutely. And there's people that sit kind of on each side of the of the camp, if you like, people that are like very pro-destructive sampling and people that are very much against it.
Yeah.
And then part of the reason that I picked the methodology I did for this study is when I was doing my PhD, we didn't micro CT scan before we sampled the teeth. And there were some teeth that were sampled and the diagenesis was too far into the tooth and I couldn't tell anything.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've done damage to an irreplaceable part of human history, and there was no reason to, because
Right.
I couldn't extract any data from that tooth. So part of the
There's
method
no
that we've
way of
done
knowing
now,
that ahead of time. So,
no, well,
you know,
using the micro CT there is.
yeah. Oh, well,
And that's the better thing about it. So we're kind of looking and seeing, can we see different signs of diagenesis within the tooth? Is there reason to suggest, can we see IgD in that tooth, which is the how vitamin D deficiency presents in teeth? Can we see it in that tooth? Okay, if we can, then we take it to the next step. If we can't see anything, or we have reason to believe that that sample is not going to be able to yield result, then we're not going to sample it and we're not going to take it to the next level because there is no reason to.
yeah.
But I also think that the handling and working as ethically as possible also includes, publications that we do and outreach that we do. So when I'm doing outreach, I'll always give like a kind of a brief at the beginning to say, I am going to include pictures of human remains. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to leave. Like there's no reason for you,
Yeah.
to feel uncomfortable or stay. People ultimately, they know what they want to see and what they don't want to
Right.
see. But also even when we're kind of like publishing, so a lot of the stuff that I've worked on, especially within the monograph, that focused on the child health and obviously pictures of children that were ultimately sick, that can also be really triggering to people. So
Yeah.
rather than put, full kind of neonatal skeletons or full children's skeletons in, that could potentially be quite upsetting, quite triggering.
Yeah.
I'd rather just put the single element in, and that way it removes that stress or anxiety that people might feel around seeing it as well.
Yeah.
So I just think it's making sure that we are so aware that also working with human remains is a privilege. It's not a
Yeah.
right. And making sure that we preserve as much as we can for future generations of researchers to come along. Because when you think back to radiocarbon dating, when it first started, you needed a huge amount of bone to be able to get any kind of date. And now you need about 2 to 3 grams, which
Yeah.
is a tiny,
Gotta,
tiny amount.
yeah.
And it's going to get less and less and less as methods develop and advance.
Yes.
So,
Less
yeah,
intrusive.
yeah. And so, but also just because we can, it doesn't mean that we should. And I should also
Yeah.
say, as part of this, like, Manx National Heritage are very, very kind of strict with sampling and all that type of thing. So I have to submit an application to them, and their team review it. They decide if they give me permission or if they don't give me permission to take those samples. All samples are fully recorded,
Yeah.
photographs. So we've got the micro CT scans as well this time. The other thing that they do, and that's just partially because, like you mentioned, the history of finding things has not always been amazing. So they have like export licenses here. So for me to take anything Manx out of the Isle of Man, I require a license, and that
Oh,
has to stay with the remains throughout the entire time. And then, and that's a legal requirement for
yeah.
anything that leaves the Isle of Man. And then it comes back, and every time period, like so, there's a set time period on these licenses, and we review it. So it is a very much a restricted process. People can't
Yeah.
just come in and take things, and that is, largely because in the past things like that have happened, and the appropriate controls are in place to make sure that we are, or like Manx National Heritage are definitely doing everything they can to preserve our history and our heritage to the best of their ability.
So let me ask you this, because I know that this sometimes in other areas as well as an argument. Do you do they excavate the bones and then they permanently stay in a lab or museum, or do they get tested and returned back to its in situ position, or what happens here? Because I know some people just complain just in general if it's like if the bones are removed from their grave at all, or
So
you know.
Yeah, the laws here are slightly different. So
Yeah.
whether or not they're ethical is, I guess, is debatable depending on how it sounds. So, anything that's over, so the Human Tissue Act, which is our like the piece of legislation that governs kind of and says, anything over 100 years is archaeological, everything under is kind of considered modern,
Modern.
and the
Yeah.
legislation around it. That's like a UK based piece of legislation, and that only came in relatively recently here.
Oh, wow.
So everything, and there's lots of laws around kind of ownership around the artifacts and things like that, but they're not really considered human remains
Mm.
in terms of like the ownership. So if you find things on your land, you can legally own them. There's no requirement to take them to places, such as
Including
museums.
skeletons or no?
Yeah, no, including skeletons. But
Oh,
I will say that the narrative and like there's so much focus here on Manx history and Manx heritage. So many people want to preserve it. They want
right.
to understand it. It's such an active research area for so many people that they have a great relationship. And people are regularly taking things in that they find to the
Right.
museum and to the organization themselves. Metal detectorists are always finding the most amazing things. And it's a really wonderful center and almost like hub for all types
It's
of archaeological
fantastic.
finds. So they are stored by Manx National Heritage. They have a dedicated bone store,
Wonderful.
which all human remains are stored. They're stored in the correct kind of conditions, everything that
Mm.
you would expect of a national collection.
Right.
And if things are found, sometimes things happen. People do an
Yeah.
extension on the houses. They find things. All of that's kind of taken under the wing of the museum, and the correct kind of processes are followed. And like it is a very
So most
rigorous.
of the skeletons, if not all, stay on the
Yeah,
Isle of Man.
absolutely. Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Let's take a brief break, and then we will be back in a flash. Go to the bathroom, get a drink, do whatever you guys need to do, and or just pause the video. Because remember, if you're not watching the original premiere, then you can hit pause. But we will be back in a flash, and I will see you very soon. Hello, welcome back. We are with Dr. Marie Weale, and she has just been enchanting us with so much cool information and so many things for us to think about, to follow through, to continue or collaborate with her. I love it. So, for those of you who don't know where the Isle of Man is, let me make sure I'm getting this correct. I believe it's in the Irish Sea, and it's in between kind of like England, Scotland, England, Ireland, Scotland. It's like its own little entity. And
Yep.
we were talking about in regards to Lee Bayliss, who was our Roman Britain expert. He hates the word expert. He's his where his work is focused on Roman Britain, but he's very knowledgeable. That Rome didn't make it there, so it's really just this. It was covered. I forgot if we said that on camera or off camera, but you said it was kind of
Yeah.
covered by the
I
mist.
think it was. Yeah, I think it was on camera. So yeah, so they have this. Locally it's kind of like folklore and this whole thing. So it's called Manannan's cloak, which is like supposed to protect the island. And yeah, so so like being a kid, that was like there's a museum called the House of Manannan out in Peel, and like we go there on school trips, and there's a Roman soldier and he had a big cross through him, and the Romans never came here, and then folklore says it's because of the magic of Manannan's cloak. So like if you stand on the coast of England or Ireland, so like Liverpool or Dublin, we're pretty much kind of equidistant between the two of them. Some days you can see us and some days you can't, and that was
Oh
kind of
wow!
the myth of it, was because of Manannan's cloak. Obviously, whether or not that's true, that's a completely different thing. There have been some Roman artifacts found, so there's been some coins and some other bits, but no evidence of kind of occupation. At least not I'm
Yeah.
aware of.
Right,
Um,
and you said there's been a lot of trade. A lot of people did
yeah.
come through there because you found the DNA of various world residents
Hmm.
on the Isle of Man too.
Yep.
Which leads us to our next question. Um, it is what challenges have you faced in interpreting paleopathological data from isolated island context? It's not isolated in the true sense, because like you said, there's a lot of worldwide visitors there, but it is in one sense where like somehow Rome didn't really make it there. Maybe somebody who traveled to the mainland and took some Roman money over made it there, but it's weird. It's like you said, it's conspicuous,
I think
omission.
it's really like people think of it as kind of like isolated, and it is like, and I really like I put it down as like a real misconception that people think that we're isolated because
Yeah,
so one of the sites that I'm looking at, Balladol, some other work done by Katie Hemer, who's like she's fabulous, and her research really focused on migration across the island. So she's Welsh originally, and she, as part of her PhD, she looked at some of the individuals from Balladol and using like location isotopes, she found one lady, so she's an older lady, and she was born in North Africa.
wow.
This is like a cemetery that dates like the 4th to 7th century.
Yeah,
And then you go, to the Viking period, and then obviously we've got evidence of migration coming from Scandinavian regions. We go to Russian Abbey, so we go to a little bit later, so 12th century. We've got a skull that's got all kinds of crazy sharp force trauma. He's got remodeled sharp force trauma to his skull, so that's evidence of a blow that's like
yeah.
that's healed. And then time of death, or like around the time of death, he had 5 blows, separate sharp force trauma blows to his head, with some kind of bladed weapon. And I got funding from Culture Vannin to be able to radiocarbon date and location isotope him, and he's actually from the area that's kind of like modern day Hungary.
Wow. So it's really
So
good.
yeah, so like people think that we're really isolated, but actually we're not.
Right. I
And we're
would
on
be
that.
interested in the North African person, like if it ties into some sort of cultural, like Hannibal's Carthaginian,
But there's
elephant.
no like in the cemetery, she's buried like everybody else. You would never
Yeah,
know.
no, I just wonder how
And,
she made it there. Like,
and that's
if
that's
it does tie into
yeah,
it, I
and
love it.
that's the really interesting things. So whilst we think, about like immigration now and like how the whole process works, like it's been going on for a really long time, and it's so exciting to be able to see it. Um, but you can't see it on the skeletons, but you can see it on the testing that we do. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, like fundamentally, once everybody's in a hole in the ground, they all kind of look the same.
And culturally, though, like you said, she was buried normally,
Yeah,
which means she was culturally accepted because you said the dead don't bury themselves. So
yeah.
other people, felt no differently about her than they did their other citizens, and they just buried her just the same way.
And when you look at, like we talked earlier about the pagan lady and her burial again, so she's buried in what was a common Christian burial
Mhm.
type for that period, but integrating in
Yeah,
her the culture from which she came. Like I'm in
yeah,
no way am I an expert on any of these things. There's far more people out there qualified than I am to comment on them, but you see more the integration and the harmonizing of different cultures,
yeah.
and it's really common here to see multi-period archaeology. Early Christian cemeteries, early Christian places of worship, Viking cemeteries. You see them at multiple. You see multiple types of burials at the same site.
It's
So
wonderful.
it's
And
yeah,
all
it's
over.
all a big blend. Even modern day, Manx places. You can see kind of like the Norse influence into the names. You can see the Manx Gaelic influence into the names, and it's a real kind of blend
Yeah.
of the history.
And then you said the Manx have kept a really great idea of a really great job of keeping the Manx identity alive, too.
Yeah, so we have the Manx language. First
Oh,
of all,
is there?
yeah. So there is. I'm not a speaker. Anything beyond hello, goodbye, and
Is
thank
it
you.
very different, like how Celtic, Gaelic is like if you're just an English speaker, it's unintelligible type of thing too.
Oh yeah. So like
Very
good
different.
like good well it's evening where I am now. So like evening in Manx Gaelic would be Evi.
Wow. Well, it's
Thank
vaguely you
you.
can see the.
Like thank you would be Gurmayad or
That's
Gurmayu,
different.
depending on the different con like it's the culture
Like
van it would
gratitude.
yeah, like Culture Manning would be the amazing organization that kind of support all of that linguistic and
Yeah.
folklore. That's really their thing. And they do a really good job of it. So, but we do have a school. We have a primary school that teaches exclusively in Manx. There's also like multiple events. We have
So
Manx.
this is not a dead language. It is alive. It's
No,
being
oh no,
taught.
no, it's
There are people who speak it.
yep, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's very much a very alive language, a very vibrant language. There's multiple events, there's poetry, there's songs, there's all kinds of stuff. And it all
Definitely want to look
integrates
into
in.
that.
It all integrates in because it's all part of our history.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Cultural
So,
identity.
yeah,
Oh, I
absolutely.
love it. I love it.
Um, and they do an amazing job of making people feel welcome, even if necessarily they're not Manx, but they have an interest in history. And like I said before, there's multiple organisations here that have an interest in preserving and researching history and heritage. And that's not just, it's natural history. It's all kinds of different things. And there's that real interest in it and that real want and need to preserve it and realise
Yeah.
how important it is. And that's
Are
really
there
wonderful
sections
to
of the
be.
island that only speak Manx? Like, where you go into like a deep village or something, and it's like you have to speak Manx to make it through. Like, is it that culturally?
No, no. So everybody speaks English, definitely.
Okay.
There are like I do have friends who like they're exclusive at home. They speak Manx, like
Oh,
they don't
love
speak
it.
English at home. So yeah, it is very much. It was kind of really going out of fashion for a long
Yeah.
time, and so like the older generation, not so much. But then the younger generation definitely, and there's been a huge revival in it, and especially you see it on like name, so like on street names and things like that.
Yeah.
Everything is in English, and then it's in Manx underneath. Like you'd really struggle to find somewhere that isn't kind of in both. Especially like even most places you go to, they'll have like welcome, and then they'll have um care
Oh,
which is
nice.
welcome in Manx. Yeah, it's a real hybrid, and it gives you a little bit of taste of culture as well.
It's so cool
Um,
that it's the reverse, where you said the older people really don't speak it, but the revival shows and the younger people are.
yeah, yeah. So there's
So wild.
a lot of kids, and there's a whole area of the government dedicated to learn it, to teaching and preserve. Like we got free Manx lessons in school, but I moved away for 10 years.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe not the best idea. But yeah, no, there's a real want and kind of like interest in it all. And that's really
It's
nice
good
to
to
be
see. It
surrounded
made a
by.
comeback.
Yeah, really nice to be surrounded by when you're doing this type of work as well.
Yeah. Because I think there's like, Inuit cultures and some Native American languages that are going out of style that they're hoping to do exactly that. So it's almost like they should look into the style that you guys have done it and see how you've managed to bring it back in the next generation. Well, that being said, how has your work raised the profile of Manx history and heritage internationally?
So it's honestly a bit of a mixed bag. So locally, I have really positive influence, and I have a positive influence. I've had a really positive experience. Kind of raising the work or the profile of my work. I've also been able to be contacted by other researchers that are not necessarily interested in the same things that I'm interested in, but might be interested in. It's usually Vikings because they're the big thing everybody's interested in. So and been able to be kind of a contact point for people, to bring them to the Isle of Man and know who they need to contact because
Yeah,
research is really all about networking,
yeah.
and knowing the right person, the right place at the right time. So that's been really nice to be able to do. The big frustration that I have mainly on the stuff from the Isle of Man is publishing, believe it or not,
Really?
um, because we fall into a grey area of we're not English, but we're not quite different enough to be considered not English.
Right.
Um, there's also not enough people out there that are experts to be able to, if I submit something to a journal, they wouldn't necessarily be able to review the history correctly.
Hmm.
Um,
So
and
peer
that's
review is a problem.
Yeah, so it's one of those where we've been kind of been knocked back equally kind of at conferences and stuff like that. I remember a few years ago I was given a presentation about dietary reconstruction I did at Russian Abbey. And go like kind of skimming over the history of it, it was a Viking abbey, if you like. It was founded by a Viking king. I mean, you can kind of look at the political and all of that type of thing separately. And I gave the dates for the Viking period, and 1265 was the cutoff.
Mm.
And I kind of did my presentation. I got to the end, first hand up, was a gentleman, and he was like, "Oh, your dates for the Viking period are wrong." And I was like, "No."
No, they're not.
Our Viking period went on for considerably longer. We had a whole kingdom, which was the kingdom of Man of the Kingdom of Man in the Isles, which was us and multiple Scottish Hebrides. It was 200 years
Got
of conflict and a lot of changes of kings and all kinds of things. But it is very different.
it.
So and that's something I found through publishing is that articles will get knocked back because there's not enough people out there that know about us.
Right.
Or if it's not, like a boat burial or something really, really exciting, they're
Yeah.
kind of like, oh well, it's doesn't fit within the remit of the journal. So it's been a bit of a bit of a learning curve, definitely. And that's why for like Manx stuff, I've had to pursue kind of like other areas of publishing, so like publishing in local journals, being involved in monograph projects that are published by Manx National Heritage and things like that. So, and then like raising awareness of them on my own like social media platforms.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the work is still out there and it is still really good work. It's just
Yeah.
that, and I understand the point of peer review and I very much agree with it, but it doesn't always work in the way that people think it does. And sometimes it can be an even bigger barrier.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And that even goes to show, to your point, that you were probably presenting at a conference with at least Viking enthusiasts, if not Viking academics, and they weren't even familiar with the information. It
Yeah.
almost makes you want to have just like somebody to not write necessarily an academic, like a very academic book, but just like a nonfiction story, historical, um, tale of it, so that then that can lead most of just the casual, even armchair reader enthusiast of that area, and then that might lead into more peer review, the ability to be peer reviewed, because more and more people are going to know what you're talking about, even, that
Yeah,
is to
it's
say.
really interesting. So, but it's yeah, I mean, it's all about raising awareness and
Yeah.
and kind of you got to break down those barriers and just also open people's minds. You have to make the information like it's all well and good doing research and all of that, but fundamentally, if your research is inaccessible to everybody else,
Yeah.
then you've not really improved anything and you're not sharing the knowledge. So what's the point?
And the thing
It
is
has
is
to be
that,
understandable and accessible.
yeah, and you have the receipts. So it's like, it's not even like it's theory or conjecture. I mean, you guys know that the Vikings stayed longer. This is information that everybody on the island, well, I guess the first thing is making sure everybody on the island man knows about it, and then send them all out as missionaries of history, and be like, all right,
Raise
here you
awareness.
go. Everybody, you've got your assignments.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, you've worked to promote the visibility of the Isle of Man's archaeology in the past, and we're just talking about the reactions you've seen from the public or the academic community. Is there anything else you'd like to add from that? Or, essentially, it seems like not all of academia knows even the information that you guys have to present, and you're having problems with peer review because not enough people are at that level to provide even the peer review. So can other people from the Isle of Man who are focused on this peer review your types of writings, or other people there too?
So I mean like the stuff I do, like the human remains side of stuff, not too much. As far as I'm aware, I'm
You're
the
the
only
one.
active like researcher on it. There are other people that have done like odd little bits and pieces. But
Yeah.
I know like I know from the monograph project, I was speaking to Archaeology magazine around the time that they were trying to find somebody to review this, this wonderful monograph that we'd all put kind of, but I say we, like I co-authored a chapter. Peter Davey, the the editor, blood, sweat and tears
Wow.
for him and his fabulous wife Philippa, and they put so much work into the project, and then um you know company like somebody like Archaeology Magazine were really struggling to find somebody to review it because they because of how specialized it was.
Yeah.
So it's really, but we
You
also
got to
have to
work on it.
kind of, yeah, absolutely. Like you just have to just keep going.
You know how cool it is that you're like one of the only people in the world on this specialty? That is cool. We have to admit.
Well, I wouldn't say there's a lot of people that are much more specialized on it than I am. But I'm surrounded by them. That's the
Yeah,
other thing.
it's a
So
little hotbed of people that are
yeah,
all.
absolutely.
Again, we need team Dr. Weale here to spread its tendrils into it. Um, are you published? Are you published in Archaeology magazine?
No,
Like
so we
a
did.
portion
So
of you just
they
helped
did.
research it?
Yeah, they did a review, which was really like it was really good. But yeah, I mean, even like some of the organisations I'm part of, they struck and again because really rich community with loads of interest, and everybody kind of gets involved in the projects and stuff like that. The organisations here are also finding it difficult to find people to review stuff because
Yeah,
everybody's involved in it. So.
yeah, it's
Um,
true.
yeah, it's quite I suppose in that way, like in terms of the research into Manx history, it is quite insular because
Yeah,
um, we're all kind of involved in everything. So
yeah. So you can't be an independent eye on it.
no, not
Didn't you
all.
say you said you talked to somebody? Was it? No, it wasn't Denmark. Did you say that you talked to somebody else who did like the same type of vitamin D type of
Yeah,
paleo?
yeah. So
But
we have a little yeah, like I know other people that do the same type of vitamin D deficiency and stuff that I do, definitely. So it's
we
really good
need
to
them
get.
to peer review you. We need to get these
We
papers out.
yeah, so that type of stuff, it's really good to, run ideas pie and stuff like that. But that's why I have a really great archaeologist, independent archaeologist, and the archaeological curator for Manx National Heritage within the project. And they're really great at knitting it all together,
Love
and
it.
making sure the archaeology is correct.
Yeah, sound as well. Yeah, because if it's true, it makes sense on
Yeah.
all sides. Well, you were talking about various projects. So you've recently contributed to the major monograph at the Russian Abbey. What was that experience like? I mean, it was
Compared
very,
to other publishing experiences, it was
yeah,
lovely.
there you go.
It was, yeah. No, so the editor of it, Dr. Peter Davey, he is a wonderful, seasoned academic that just he has one of those minds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Um,
that's why
and
Philippa was helping as well too. Is she an
yeah, so
academic?
Dr. Philippa Tomlinson, like
Oh,
she's
okay.
also fabulous and an incredibly knowledgeable person. Um, um, so they were amazing. And also to kind of so I started volunteering with Manx National Heritage coming straight out of my undergraduate degree. Um, and I'm now like 10 years down the line of that.
Wow.
So I was like when we started it, I was like really kind of hadn't had like I'd done like one or two small articles in like a local journal,
Yeah.
hadn't really done a lot, and they took me under their wing. They really helped and mentored me in terms of writing, in terms of helping me understand things because I'm also dyslexic as well, so my spelling is atrocious. And they were nothing but encouraging and supportive in it, and that was a great experience to
That's
be able to have, as well as like kind of like growing up and having this in this interest in Manx history and Manx heritage. Like I've had books on my shelf by Peter for years. So then to be able to work with him on something
oh,
was
that's
incredible. But also it's really nice the way that they've done it. So they have the monograph, but then they also have all of our independent technical reports. So there's like one from me, there's one from a coin expert, there's all kinds of things. And they're all available freely online as well. So you
wow.
can have the monograph, and that obviously you have to pay for that, but then all the independent technical reports that kind of will encourage research and will encourage people to reach out. They're all available free online.
That's
And
fantastic.
that was something that was really wonderful to be able to be a part of. So I independently authored the um, technical report, and it is incredibly detailed. But again, I kind of wrote it in a way that anybody can pick it up
I love that.
because otherwise, if my research isn't accessible to people that are interested in what I'm doing, then I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot, aren't I?
Yeah, because it's,
Um,
it
yeah.
stays insular with you. You know, what you're saying reminded me of two of my past guests. Dr. Joshua Matthews. I went on a Jurassic dinosaur expedition with him this past summer, and his big thing about what to tell students about getting in the field is relationship, relationship, relationship. And what his big coming to be moment was, he said there were people that whose reports he read, books he's read for years, and then he went from admiring them from afar to having dinner with them. And you went from, reading his
Yeah.
books for years to being personally taught by him,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
you know.
kind of as well with my PhD. So, one of the external examiner for my PhD wrote kind of like one of the first ever papers on the evidence of rickets and how you identify rickets.
Yeah.
And that was published in, I think it was like 1998.
By
Um,
you? No.
no,
Oh,
not
you're
by me, no.
you're
So, oh
young.
good
Yeah, I
gosh,
mean,
no.
yeah, I was gonna say there's no way you
So
wrote that.
the yeah, the external examiner for my PhD was somebody who'd kind of
Oh,
broken down that barrier and done one of those first ever papers.
wow.
So it's somebody that I'd been reading for years, and
And
we kind
that's got to be nerve-wracking that that's just going to be reviewing
of
for you,
terrifying,
you know?
terrifying, but also he's fabulous, and he gave criticism, but he gave it in such a way that it was so constructive.
Yes.
And he was always at the end of an email. He was always really happy to help me and help me understand exactly what it was that I was missing. Um,
Wonderful.
and to be able to have access to that. And like initially when we were choosing examiners, I was like, I don't know. That sounds
Yeah.
it sounds terrifying. But actually through going to conferences, through networking, we'd had lunch a couple of times, we'd exchanged a few emails, different things. And it was, yeah, so it made the whole experience kind of worthwhile. And you know that when somebody's had a 30-year career in
Yeah.
research it, that you have to tap into that information and into that knowledge and really appreciate what they have to say.
I gotta say that really says a lot about your character and your academic prowess, because iron sharpens iron. So you didn't shy away from being constructively criticized, so to speak, by an expert in this. Some people would do the easier route. They choose somebody that's not doesn't really know too much about it, so they skate on by. But you made sure with laser precision that it was an expert and that your material, your data, your information is top notch. Top notch, my dear, top notch. Oh, we also had, by the way, talking about coin experts. One of the past guests was Professor Mihak Sejwal. She's a numismatic expert on Indian coins and whatnot. But I think she'd like to see stuff from around the world. So if I might go looking around through this stuff and send some stuff over to her. She's really good too. She's a professor, so she teaches a bunch of students as well. She has, by the way, her claim to fame is she has the highest viewed episode of all of the Bannworth Academy ancient news episodes. We'll see if she can hold on to that. Let's see. Next question. Yeah, what role do you think osteoarchaeology plays in shaping modern conversations about public health and maternal care? So, like you said, it's not, dietary related illnesses are not a thing of the past.
No,
So
no.
what can we learn from, and you said it got even greater in the 1800s. So
Yeah.
how can we talk about that? How do you think it should play out?
I don't think it plays a role. I mean, when you look at like we said before, when you look at female healthcare in general, it could be so much better. And there's all kinds of biases and things. And when you look at the countries across the world as well, like medical care for women's really taken a step back. like research is not being funded, access to, fundamental procedures is being removed, and all of that kind of really concerning things. And obviously there's various political points that we could talk about it, but like I said before, like maternal health, the health of women is the foundation of every population.
Yeah.
If you have unhealthy women, you have unhealthy children.
Yeah.
And I know that male genetic material contributes to female health, to the health of the
The
infant as well.
placenta
And
yeah.
yeah, and I've not for one second trying to dismiss that. But when you look at the gaps in male health versus female health
Hmm.
and the care that they receive, it's huge.
Yeah.
So you can make the men as healthy as you want, but if women are still unhealthy, still not receiving access to the care that they should, then it doesn't matter, and
Yeah.
it's all almost done in vain because an unhealthy woman cannot carry, or you would very much struggle to carry a healthy child.
Yeah, because it's going to rob the already unhealthy mother of everything she's got to
Yeah.
try to make a healthy baby. To your point, there have been different historical civilizations where the men, the warriors, would get the meat to eat or the best foods to eat because, the idea was that they needed to go fight. And then the women were eating more of a not a completely, but more vegetarian grain-based diet, and then the men were able to be more robust in their iron levels because they were getting red meat and other things like that. So it's true. If the women who are producing what they want to be powerful males as well as powerful women, they need to be taken care of with the same dietary considerations across the board, and
Mhm.
also not shoved in a dungeon somewhere where they can get the sunshine that they need.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And but also just even, access to the same level of medical care, not having to wait for longer, not having to wait to be diagnosed with conditions. Like some conditions, it's taking an average of 7 years for a woman to be diagnosed with it. And there's a lot of like, if you're a woman and you go to the doctor with pain, or you're not, they'll send you out there, tell you to take 2 ibuprofen, and or
Yeah.
you be hysteric, or and you look at the kind of the history of gynecology, for example, and you look at the horrors that kind of went into that,
Like
and
Victorian era too is really
absolutely. And you
most
look at,
recent.
kind of the I read a book recently, and it was Women in Power, and it was a manifesto. I'm not advertising it, but it was very, very
But
interesting. And it just looked at how from like ancient Greece upwards, just the separation and the segregation of the sexes
yeah,
has
even in
worked.
royal levels.
Hmm. And
So they
even
were
how
getting,
it's always worked for men.
yeah.
Um, I'm saying this and putting this on the internet.
Well,
Um,
I
um, and how
it's the
it
truth
always
is the
has.
truth is the truth.
Yeah, and how it always has, and because of that, like the looking around, talking of women's health, and women used to be able to treat women. They were a source of kind of medical knowledge within the community and things like that. And then there was a removal of that, with the rise of patriarchy and like male political frameworks and things like that. And then you look at the history of like burning witches and all of that type of thing. Like they didn't burn witches, they burnt intelligent women
Yeah.
that
If you can
didn't
read,
align
oh
with
no.
things, you know.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and it's really not shocking that we have this disparity that we have.
Yeah. No, and
Because,
we talked about in school here, we're dealing with the plague a bit,
Mhm.
and we're doing a little focus on it, both all three of the epidemics. And a lot of the times the plague can be hazarded down to the concept of perhaps the witch hunts led to it because they also were talking about shape shifting witches into like cats. So when they
Mm,
were removing the cats, the rats and the black rats with their fleas were running rampant because there weren't as many cats running around to knock out the population of rats. And
mm,
so that even has a bit to do with it too. And to your point too, talking about Hatshepsut again, in ancient Egypt, when she wanted to be recognized on equal footing as a pharaoh and not just a queen co-regent waiting for Thutmose the Third to age up, she wore a false beard. So she wanted to be recognized. I mean, she was by no means like believing she was a man or whatever. It was purely a political concept of I want to be recognized on equal footing as the pharaoh. And then she tragically died of cancer, but at least it was on her own right and not through assassination attempts, which a lot of people thought that as Thutmose aged out that he was getting rid of her. But so we're gonna take our last break before the closing of this episode. It's been a really great ride with you through all these concepts. When we come back, we're gonna talk more about getting into this kind of career and what you can do. And there's something very interesting that you said to me on break that I'd like you to sneak into this last excerpt. So we're gonna take our final break. We'll see you back in a few minutes, everybody. And thank you if you've stayed on through all of these episodes, you're really gonna know a lot about the Manx civilization, the Isle of Man. I mean, this is she's doing her part as in being the so quote unquote missionary of the Manx culture. So very cool, very cool. We'll see you in the flash. Welcome back to the final section of Dr. Marie's very interesting interview. If you stayed the course, then you're going to know a lot more about the Isle of Man than you did before you started. So let's get into our last couple of questions. What advice? So now we're talking about people who want to follow in your footsteps. So what advice would you give students, especially women, interested in pursuing a career in archaeological sciences?
So I'm a first generation academic, or like first generation. I went to university and first person in my family to do the whole course and come up with the PhD. So like the first one is just to believe in yourself. Like I think it's not to sound cheesy, but I really do think it's a big thing to try and have a go at it because it's not easy and there's a lot of barriers that are in place, especially when you're first generation. I think it's a lot harder. The second thing would be to surround yourself with like-minded people.
Yes.
And this kind of comes from trial and error. So like earlier on in research, I was surrounded by people who maybe are potentially taking a little bit of advantage, getting me to do work on things that I wasn't going to be credited for. And it is part of the journey, but surrounding yourself with people that are on that similar mind, like kind of wavelength to you in terms of working collaboratively, making sure that everybody, kind of does their share, everybody's credited correctly, but also just having a safe space to kind of share how you're feeling because research and like certainly academia, it can be really quite isolating sometimes, and that's not always great. If you are considering to do postgraduate research, like do a PhD, make sure you research your supervisors.
Oh, that's wise.
And I don't just mean look at them and look at their citations. I mean talk to them. I mean talk to their previous PhD students, talk to other people in the field and see what they've heard of them and if they've heard good things. Because your research is going to be a full-time job for 4 to 7 years of your life, potentially longer if you did it in the US. And it's not a short-term thing. And you need a supervisor who is going to prioritize your physical health and your mental health over anything and everything else. Like, yes, your work is important, but so are you as a person. And I really can't stress that enough. There is still a lot.
That makes sense in America a lot. I don't know what the academic culture is over there, but that is very good because so much so it's results driven in America. It's like it doesn't matter how many hours you work or how long or if you've got like a crisis going on at home. Deadline is a deadline is a deadline, and that is such a good way to put it. What you said.
There is a lot of toxicity in academia. There's a lot of negativity. And and it's so overwhelming sometimes as well, I think is the other thing. And it certainly was for me. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm going to conference. I remember the first ever kind of like big conference I went to. Um, I had somebody came up to me, and at that point I still kind of had a Manx kind of accent. I don't have one anymore, but I still kind of had one. And I remember talking to somebody because you know, like you do your poster at the conference, somebody comes over, they ask you some questions. So they'd read my poster, they came over, and they just said to me straight to my face, "Oh, you sound so much smarter on paper than you do in person."
Oh, wow. Because of your
Like, oh,
accent or
and I
the,
was like, oh my goodness. Like, and it just immediately makes you feel like you don't fit in. And actually,
yeah.
your life experience, your intelligence, like all of that is absolutely just as valid in that space as they
But
are.
it's so crazy because you're teaching about also a spotlight on Manx culture, and to have a Manx accent would make it even more, you know,
Um, so
on the
yeah,
nose.
and then my PhD supervisors were two very strong female academics that
Mm,
come from, you know, they have a lot of guidance and a lot of wisdom to offer. Um, and as a result, they always prioritized my physical and mental health over
wonderful.
anything and everything else.
Yeah.
But I know many people who are not that lucky. Um,
Yeah.
so that would honestly be my top piece of advice would be to really look at it because once you're so far down the line, you
Yeah.
can't jump ship.
Yeah. Spot
And it
on.
and it's normal, you know, like to have disagreements with your supervisors because ultimately you're going to go on this journey where you're going to become a specialist in something, you know, whatever it might be. And this isn't just specific to archaeology. This is, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're doing a PhD in anything, and you're going to become at some point you're going to become a specialist, and you're going to know things and see things in a different way than what your you know your supervisory team are.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is normal. But if you are being pressured into stuff you don't feel comfortable with, if
Right.
you have supervisors that are taking credit for things that you have done and you are not being awarded that credit that you are due, um, those are things that are
I have
not.
experience in that. I have experience in that
And
where,
that is, you know, and that is what you want to try and avoid because
yeah.
academia, like for people who want to research and want to improve things and always want to learn more, um, the culture doesn't always match the appetite. And I
Yeah.
think that's the really can be quite disheartening thing about it.
Yeah. No.
That would be my
That's
top
so on
advice.
the nose. That's sound advice. And also you had said something off camera about, let's just say this isn't for you.
Yeah,
What?
no,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I mean, I did my undergraduate, my master's, and my PhD back to back. So
Oh
I
yeah.
did 10 years.
Wow.
Um, and I came to the end of it, and I was like, do you know what? Like I mentioned earlier, I kind of fell out of love with it for a while, and then I was like, do you know what? I need a break. And that's what I'm doing right now. So
Yeah.
I work in something completely different. I work in enterprise risk and finance and all kinds of stuff. Little bits of all kinds of stuff thrown in. But actually, it's your PhD, the skills you learn or the skills you develop in a PhD are not specific to the field you are interested in.
Yes.
They are specific, they are so general. Project, like
Yes.
if you can coordinate a PhD, that's a project management skill.
Hmm.
Like, if you're dealing with reams of data, that's data quality and data management. If you're
Yes.
doing statistical analysis, that's a whole separate skill.
Yeah.
Writing and you know understanding, that's a whole set of teaching as well. There are so many skills. You do networking, you do presentations, you do huge amounts of things all in the background of doing a PhD, and you come into this person that is you might not feel that you're highly employable, but actually you have a skill set that a lot of people will want because
Yes.
of that.
Yeah.
And
So it's
I
all
don't think that that's
transferable.
raised. I don't think that's talked about enough. Absolutely, your skills are transferable, 100%.
I
You
love it.
might not have, like, I work in a team currently of accountants. I'm not an accountant. At no point have I ever pretended to be an accountant. They know
Right.
I'm not. But the fact that I see things differently to them, they all think in the same way
Hmm.
because they're accountants and that's what they've
Right.
trained for.
So you have a fresh outlook.
but I have a completely different perspective. And
Yeah.
I really love to question things that they just take for, kind of standard and that they take as acceptance. And I'm like, well, why does it do that? How,
Yeah.
why is it that way? Or can we do this slightly differently? And just thinking about things
It's the
and having that
scientist in
open
you.
mind and having that research mindset is a really valuable skill. And people
Yes.
don't think it is.
Yeah. So like you said, you have your master's, you have your doctorate in in niche, specialties, but it transferred over. So a lot of people I think sometimes are worried. I told you in America there seems to be a lot of people with like psychology degrees and business degrees. Like, oh, everybody's got an MBA, everybody's got a psychology degree because they're so worried that they're going to get some sort of like niche specialty and then it's not going to be employable or sustainable. But you're showing that the skills that you learn along the way can be used in multi-facets. If you can coordinate a PhD, then you can project manage. I mean, so wise. And there's so many avenues, project managers, you can do jobs in all types of fields. Find something you love. And you've got a great work balance because you're doing something different in the daytime, which uses and is fine tuning your skills, even though it's not within, osteology or archaeology. And then you get to spend all the research time on your leisure, and it's so you get to keep what you love and love what you're doing.
But I think as well also like when you do research full time, like I like especially the environment currently like in the UK and stuff, like you really struggle to find permanent research positions. Like everything's
Mm,
temporary contract. It's 6 months, it's 12 months, it's whatever.
yeah,
And do I realistically want to pack up and move every 12 months?
right.
Do I
Or
want to
have
be
that anxiety. Am I going to get the next
do
finance?
I want to jump from contract to contract, never
Yeah,
being financially stable enough to do the things that I want to do? And it's like you have to weigh it up, and it might work really well for some people,
yeah,
um, uh, but it didn't feel right for me.
yes,
And I think that's the other thing is that you get taken into this branch and you do academia, and the idea is that eventually you'll become a lecturer or and
professor.
work your way up.
Yeah,
Yeah. But you know what? It's okay if you don't.
yeah,
Like, and
yeah,
it's so competitive as well. So like, hundreds of people are applying for that one teaching role or that one research role. Um, and it's just not always possible. And it doesn't mean that your skill set's not good enough or whatever
yeah.
else.
It just
Um,
means you don't want to play the, office politics either. You just want to
yeah.
research for the love of research,
And it's also, you get to the end of it or whatever and you think, Joe, this isn't like I love it, but this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
right? Yeah,
And I think that's the other thing. But doing my research as a hobby and doing it in my spare time, in a way kind of makes me appreciate it and love it more because it's something I look forward to doing now.
yeah,
Whereas when I was doing it every day, it was like, oh God, I've got to get this done. I've got to find this deadline. And it kind of it takes the enjoyment out of it.
yes. I
Um,
love it. It's a very
so
honest snapshot of the
yeah,
realities of everyday academia, and it's so true. And I'm glad you're saying it like on camera because I feel like sometimes the people in academia they'll have feelings similar that you have eloquated, and they won't say it. They don't want. They're just experiencing this burnout, or like the falling out of love, or like, oh, I have to do this in time, and that they're losing their first love, of it. And it is so good that you've not only have you talked about this is something that people could feel, but also shown how you've managed to have a workaround to where you still are a member of academia. You're doing it now in a way that is enriching your life instead of robbing your life of the joy and peace you could have. Just it's very wise. It's very good. I mean, obviously, there's people on both ends where they enjoy the deadlines and they enjoy the hustle and bustle of the politico of it, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's something worth saying because like
Yeah,
for a long time I really kind of felt lost. I was like, how can you be a researcher if you don't have a university and you don't have access to, a lab and you don't have access to all of these things? And then I was like, actually, um, none of that really matters.
No.
too much. Ultimately, you can pay people to, you can, like I do, you can apply for funds, and if you're lucky, you can get access to those funds, and there's labs that can do your analysis for you. Like
Yeah.
your skill set is in a way independent of your university.
Yes. Yes.
I spend my weekends in an archaeology project room at a museum. Um, and I have a great working relationship with that organization and with multiple other local organizations, and I get much more reward out of that than I do or than I did through kind of trying to pursue career in academia. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's good. It's good balance. It's a good thing too, especially for people who are hesitant about doing it, where they can see you can balance it. You can find a way to make it work. Um, it's very good that you've said this. So now this one is all about you. It doesn't have to be at all related to anything that we've talked about today. So this is Dr. Weale's last question. If you could spend one day at a historical site of your choosing, which would you pick and why?
Um, do you know, I honestly sat and I thought about this question for so long, and I couldn't pick an answer.
Really?
I couldn't. And I
Would you
feel
leave
like
the Isle of Man, however? Well, how about that? Would you leave the island, or would it definitely be?
um do you know my favorite place in in the world to go is it's actually so it's a place on the Isle of Man. And it's called the Sound, so it's like right at the bottom of the Isle of Man.
Oh, okay.
And it's you so from it you can see the Calf of Man, which is like a tiny little I mean we're a tiny island, but this is you can see the
Tinier,
whole yeah,
yeah.
you can see the whole thing. And it's just so nice and so peaceful, and you can in the summer there's seals that are there, and it's just the most stunning place. But and that's like one of my favorite places to go. They have like a wonderful place there where you can get food and you can literally just sit and just watch the
Oh,
world go by, and it's really lovely. But I realized that I was talking to my husband about it last night, and I was like, the reason I can't kind of pick one is because, in all honesty, I'm really spoiled.
you do live
Um,
in a very culturally rich area.
yeah, no, absolutely. So I don't know many people who can be like, oh, yeah, the house I grew up in, you go 10 minutes one direction, there's like a medieval castle. You go 10
Yeah.
minutes the other direction, there's a Viking boat burial. You go 15 minutes the other way, there's a medieval abbey. You go 30 minutes, there's so much of it here.
Shockingly, it's a repeated thing of all the guests on the show. So the
Um,
Egyptologist, Ibrahim Salama, he lived amongst the pyramids, like right up where everything was like right there. And so he got into Egyptology. And then Lee Bayliss, who is UK based, he lived amongst all of the Roman Britain things and a few Iron Age roundhouses. So it's weird. It's like people who
get
are
under your
born into
skin.
that setting get into this
Mm.
thing. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
the proud, the archaeologists, you know.
no, it's just it's one of those things where I was like, I can't pick one, and then I realized it's because like I don't know many people that can say it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's really fun, and it makes it more interesting as well because it's like I went to Russian Abbey all the time as a child, so it's
Mm,
like the kind of thing. It's kind of like it's come full circle, and now I'm like I'm researching the skeletons that were from there.
yeah.
And used to go and play at the beach. The Ballador sits kind of on top of this beach, and we used to go there all the time. And Peel Castle, go there on school trips and like all of these other things. So you kind of be surrounded by it all your life. I guess it kind of it ends up sticking with you. But yeah, I couldn't. I
So
really
you
like.
would choose the Isle of Man, essentially. You would
I guess so. Yeah,
stay put, yeah. That's
which is
pretty cool. That's a
which is
good ode to Manx.
yeah.
I'd stay here type of
Yeah.
thing.
No, it is. It's good, and yeah, there's so much here to see.
Yeah.
For people who are into history and into heritage, and we have more than just Vikings. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
We have a lot, but we
Yeah.
have more than just Vikings.
I mean, the Viking settlement wasn't too much of the time considering
No,
the
there's so
history
much more
back. Yeah,
before and after. And
yeah.
we,
So,
you know, we have wonderful, yeah, we have the largest working wheel in the world. Just
oh wow.
randomly used to pull water out of Laxey mines, or the mines in Laxey, and yeah, we have loads of, and we're also a biosphere for stars, dark. We've got like
Oh,
26 starry night locations because we have such low levels of light pollution.
I
Something I found out recently this year.
have
Um,
you seen the core of the universe or the spine, as they say, of
the
like the Milky Way?
the north up. Oh, I don't know. I feel like you'd need a telescope for that one.
There
Uh,
is I'm desperate to see it. And like I was in Utah on the dinosaur exposition, and it was the time when you were supposed to see it. And it was like a site that I was going to go to, but you had to be there up in the middle of the night, and I had to be on the expedition every morning at like 7 or 8 in the morning. So I didn't stay up, and plus it was up in the mountains. I was afraid I was to like drive off because it's like dark. And then I'm most almost 90% going to Easter Island this upcoming summer, and it's supposed to be visible there. So I'm like chasing. I've never seen it in person. I'm like chasing it around the world here.
we
Um,
so last was it last yeah, it must have been last year when they had the big solar flares and you could
oh
see
yeah,
northern lights. So it's funny because me and my husband we booked to go and see them in Sweden, like right in the north of Sweden,
wow,
COVID year, and obviously the entire world shut down. We couldn't go, and it was crazy, and we've never rebooked it.
oh,
And then these big solar flares happened, and we went to a beach like in the kind of like north in the island called Cornay, and we were the only two people on this beach just watching the northern lights over what is like a harbor type thing,
yeah.
and they were just like they were just coming down over the hills, like it was just absolutely stunning. And there's virtually no light pollution. You could see everything you needed to see. Like it was just an absolutely amazing experience, and it's like that's 25 minutes from my house. Like,
Crazy.
so there is so much here
Yeah, it was actually
to
visible in
kind of see.
Florida. The
Oh, yeah.
Northern Lights were visible in Florida last this was it this year? I don't know, recently. And
Mm.
I unfortunately was teaching until doomsday, and so I didn't get outside to see it in person. So I had to just look at all of my friends' pictures online that were like literally outdoors. And I was like, man, how did I miss
We were
this?
just, yeah, we sat on this beach, just absolutely just the two of us on our own,
How
and just
cool.
watching the most amazing thing, and you're just like, wow, yeah, it's so cool.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah,
there's loads of stuff here.
yeah.
So I couldn't pick one, so I just kind of picked them all, really.
I agree. I agree, and I see why. That's very good. Well, you've been an amazing guest. I'm sure I'm going to watch this with a lot of the students tomorrow too. Oftentimes we have it playing in the classrooms, and like they just see it all together. So I'm very cool, very interested. I'd love to see how the conversations, how they play out, stemming from this. And thank you again for so much time, such a snapshot into your work, into your expertise, and actually now our school will have an interest in, Manx culture too. They're going to have an idea of even the Isle of Man, because um, I feel like not enough snapshot. I mean, you even clarified to me that how it's its own separate thing. So like,
Yeah.
it has just been a wealth of knowledge all the way around. So thank you again. And there you have it, fellow time travelers. A journey is not just through centuries, but through the marrow of human experience. A special thank you to Dr. Marie Weale for sharing her passion, her research, the silent stories of those bones that still whisper from beneath the soil of the Isle of Man or from the museum. Today's episode reminds you that every skeleton holds a saga, and that the past has much to teach the living if you're in the right place. So remember our saying, it belongs in the museum. We have a trowel and we'll travel. Well, she'll show up on the bone side of it. She'll be the
The
in
lab.
the in lab side of it, and I'll be on the outside lab of it. So if you want to catch this full episode and last week's episode, remember that they are completely available on YouTube, they're available on Facebook, and they're available on LinkedIn. And if you're a student of bones or just curious about the secrets beneath your feet, please join us for more episodes on Bannworth Academy, Ancient News, and always, you can reach out to her too if you have more information or that you want more information. You could send her data, whatever. She is the person to talk to in the Isle of Man. So until next time, keep digging deeper.